beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
At 2:28 in the morning, an 84-year-old woman's pacemaker stopped sending signals to her phone. That single moment, captured by medical monitoring software, may be the last digital trace of Nancy Guthrie's life. But here's what investigators know that makes this case different from any kidnapping in recent memory. The person who took her left DNA behind, and that DNA is about to destroy them. This is the story of how one woman vanished from her locked home in 41 minutes. How doorbell cameras that were supposed to be erased actually saved the evidence. And how the same science that caught the Golden State Killer after 40 years is now closing in on whoever took Nancy Guthrie from her bed while her family slept miles away. January 31st, 2026, evening, Tucson, Arizona. Nancy Guthrie had dinner at her daughter Annie's home. They ate together, played games, talked. A normal Friday night. Around 9:48 that evening, the Nancy's son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni, drove her home to the Catalina foothills, a quiet neighborhood outside Tucson. Big houses, desert landscape, safe. Her garage door closed behind her at 9:50 p.m. Security cameras captured it. That was the last time anyone in her family saw her. Nancy was 84 years old. She had a pacemaker, limited mobility. She needed daily medication just to stay alive. But according to Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos, she was sharp as could be. No cognitive issues whatsoever. And Nancy had lived in the Tucson area for more than 50 years. She moved there with her family in the early 1970s. Lost her husband Charles back in 1988 when he died at 49 on a mining trip in Mexico. Raised 3 children on her own after that. One of those children was Savannah Guthrie, who would go on to become co-host of NBC's Today Show, one of the most recognized news anchors in America. Nancy Guthrie was not the kind of person who simply wandered off. She was reliable, predictable, and her friends knew her schedule. Her family talked to her daily. But sometime in the early morning hours of February 1st, something happened inside that house on Camino Escalante. And what investigators pieced together paints a picture that is terrifying and methodical. At 1:47 a.m., Nancy's Nest doorbell camera disconnected. Just went dark. No warning, no notification. 25 minutes later, at 2:12 a.m., another camera on the property detected motion. The system classified it as a person. But because Nancy didn't have an active cloud subscription for her Nest cameras, the video footage was automatically deleted, overwritten. At 2:28 a.m., Nancy's pacemaker monitoring app showed it had disconnected from her iPhone. 41 minutes. That's the window. From the moment the doorbell camera went dark to the moment Nancy's pacemaker lost connection to her phone, everything happened inside 41 minutes in the dead of night. Think about that timeline for a second. As someone knew how to disconnect the cameras, someone moved through that house, someone took an 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker out of her home, all in 41 minutes. The next morning, Nancy didn't show up for her regular virtual church service with friends. She always showed up, every week, without fail. When her friends couldn't reach her, they called her family. By 11:56 a.m., relatives arrived at the house to check on her. 7 minutes later, at 12:03 p.m., they called 911. A Pima County Sheriff's deputies arrived at 12:15 that afternoon. What they found turned a missing person report into a crime scene. Blood was discovered at or near the entrance of the home. Forensic testing would later confirm the blood belonged to Nancy. The house showed signs she had been taken against her will. Personal items left behind, medication still in the house, her phone, her purse, everything except Nancy. Sheriff Chris Nanos told reporters he believed Nancy was the victim of a targeted kidnapping. Not a random break-in, not a robbery gone wrong. Someone came for her specifically. The FBI joined the investigation almost immediately. And within days, the scope of the operation became massive. More than 400 FBI agents and sheriff's deputies would eventually be assigned to the case, scouring Pima County, a jurisdiction larger than the entire state of New Jersey. But the investigation's most critical breakthrough came on February 10th, when FBI Director Kash Patel released 4 black and white images recovered from Nancy's doorbell camera. The footage had been presumed lost. The Nest device was missing. No cloud subscription meant no backup. The data should have been gone forever. But the FBI, working closely with Google, managed to extract residual data from back-end systems that even the camera's manufacturer didn't initially think was recoverable. And these images were haunting. They showed a figure approaching Nancy's front door in the darkness. The person wore a ski mask, long sleeves, pants, gloves. A gun sat in a holster positioned oddly between his legs. A black 25-liter Ozark Trail backpack hung from his shoulders. The kind sold exclusively at Walmart for about $20. In one clip, the masked figure raises a gloved hand toward the doorbell camera, trying to figure out how to disable it. In another, he picks up foliage from a potted plant near the entrance, uses it to cover the lens. He was trying to blind the cameras before entering. He didn't know the data had already been captured, already sent to Google's servers, already saved. The FBI described the suspect as male, approximately 5'9" to 5'10", average build, what appeared to be a black mustache visible beneath the mask. Investigators later noted something else in the footage. A ring appeared to be showing through one of the suspect's gloves. Think about that detail. He wore gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints, but he didn't take off his ring. That kind of mistake tells you something. This wasn't a professional. This was someone trying to be careful but missing details. Authorities began visiting local gun shops with photos of the unusual holster, hoping someone might recognize it. Remember selling it. Remember the customer. The holster placement was wrong. See, centered between the legs instead of on the hip. Someone unfamiliar with firearms would position it that way. Another clue, another mistake. Cases where suspects leave DNA at crime scenes, where doorbell cameras capture evidence perpetrators think they destroyed, where one small error exposes everything. These are the stories that show how modern technology and old-fashioned detective work combine to catch criminals. If deep dives into how investigations crack cases fascinate you, subscribe to True Crime Antenna now. We publish 2 new documentaries every week breaking down the evidence that brings justice. Identifying a masked man from grainy footage is one thing. Proving who he is requires something more concrete. That's where the DNA trail begins. When investigators processed the crime scene at Nancy's home, they recovered biological evidence. Some of it was blood, some was other material. And critically, they found DNA on the property that didn't belong to Nancy Guthrie, didn't match anyone known to be in close contact with her. Then came a second discovery. About 2 miles from Nancy's house, in a field near the side of a road, investigators found a set of black gloves. The FBI said the gloves appeared to visually match the ones worn by the suspect in the doorbell camera footage. They were sent overnight to a private forensic lab in Florida. A male DNA profile was successfully extracted. On 2 pieces of unknown DNA, one from inside the property, one from gloves found miles away. Investigators ran both through CODIS, the FBI's combined DNA index system. This is the national database that stores genetic profiles from millions of convicted offenders and crime scene samples. It has been instrumental in solving crimes across the country for decades. But both samples came back empty. No match in CODIS. The person who left this DNA had never been convicted of a qualifying crime, or at least had never been entered into the system. And that's when investigators pivoted to a technology that has become the most significant advancement in criminal forensics in the last decade: investigative genetic genealogy. If that term sounds familiar, it should. It's the same science that caught the Golden State Killer in 2018, after 13 murders and dozens of attacks that went unsolved for more than 30 years. A retired police officer in his 70s, Joseph D'Angelo, was identified because a distant relative had uploaded their DNA to a public genealogy database. Investigators built a family tree from that distant match and worked backward until they landed on D'Angelo. It's the same method that identified Brian Kohberger in the murders of 4 University of Idaho students in 2022. Forensic genealogists used crime scene DNA to narrow the search to a family. Its investigators confirmed the match using a DNA sample pulled from the Kohberger family's trash in Pennsylvania. The process works like this. When traditional databases like CODIS fail, forensic labs upload the unknown DNA profile to public genealogy platforms, the kind millions of everyday people use when they spit into a tube and send it off to learn about their ancestry. Even if the suspect never used one of these services, a second cousin, a great aunt, or a distant relative might have. And that single match can crack open an entire family tree. From there, genetic genealogists do painstaking work. They cross-reference the DNA matches with public records, birth certificates, death records, marriage documents. They build family trees outward from the matches, then narrow them down by geography, age, and circumstance. Eventually, they triangulate on specific individuals. C.C. Moore, the chief genetic genealogist at Parabon Nanolabs, is one of the leading forensic genealogy firms in the world, said publicly that she believes the kidnapper will be identified through this technology. Her exact words to NBC News were direct and confident. She said that if she were the kidnapper, she would be extremely concerned right now. But there's a complication. The DNA recovered from Nancy's property is not a clean, single-source sample. Sheriff Nanos told reporters that the unknown DNA is a mixture, potentially containing genetic material from several people. In forensic science, mixed DNA profiles are dramatically harder to work with than clean ones. One forensic expert estimated the mixture could be roughly 90% Nancy's DNA and only about 10% from a suspect. Isolating that smaller contributor's profile cleanly enough to run through genealogy databases takes time, specialized equipment, and sometimes more than one attempt. The Pima County Sheriff's Department acknowledged that the full genetic genealogy process could take up to a year to produce results. That's not a failure. That's the reality of this science working with imperfect samples. The Golden State Killer case took months of genealogy work after the initial DNA upload. The Kohberger identification required careful elimination of dozens of family members before investigators zeroed in on their suspect. Meanwhile, the investigation hasn't stopped at DNA. Investigators have collected over 10,000 hours of video evidence. They've processed more than 18,000 tips. They've executed search warrants, detained and released multiple individuals. They've worked with tech companies, including Google, Meta, and Apple, to extract every possible piece of digital evidence from devices associated with Nancy's home. Sheriff Nanos described the challenge of recovering additional footage from Nancy's other Nest cameras by comparing it to peeling layers of paint. You have 8 layers, and you want to get to the 6th. But if you rush through the 5th, you might tear the very layer you're trying to save. It's delicate work. Companies are being careful not to destroy the data they're trying to recover. Digital forensics experts not involved in the case have pointed to another avenue: cell tower data. If the suspect's phone was active anywhere near Nancy's neighborhood that night, even briefly, those signals were captured by nearby towers. Heather Barnhart, a digital forensics expert who helped analyze phone data in the Kohberger case, told NBC News that the suspect's cell phone is a silent witness. Even if the kidnapper turned off his phone before approaching the house, the act of powering down creates a gap in the data, a digital blackout that itself becomes evidence. She pointed out that Kohberger created what she called bookends around his crime, turned off his phone before the murders, turned it back on roughly 40 minutes after. That gap, combined with cell tower pings before and after, helped investigators place him at the scene. The family, for their part, has not stopped fighting. On February 16th, the Pima County Sheriff formally cleared all members of the Guthrie family as suspects, including siblings and spouses. They had nothing to do with this. And Savannah Guthrie suspended her broadcasting duties at NBC, including coverage of the 2026 Winter Olympics, to join the search for her mother. On February 24th, the family offered a $1 million reward for any information that assists in Nancy's recovery. Savannah posted an emotional appeal on social media, saying it is never too late to do the right thing. Her brother Cameron addressed the kidnapper directly in a video, said, "Whoever is holding their mother needs to reach out." The ransom notes remain one of the strangest elements of the case. Multiple media outlets received letters demanding payment in Bitcoin for Nancy's safe return. TMZ reported one of the early notes said Nancy was okay but scared, and included a detail about the placement of her Apple Watch that had not been publicly reported. That detail was significant because it suggested whoever wrote the note had actually seen Nancy, had access to information only someone who took her would know. Two deadlines were set and passed. Then the communications stopped entirely. One man was arrested for sending a fake ransom threat, attempting to profit from the family's desperation. The FBI confirmed he had no connection to the actual kidnapping. CNN analyst John Miller raised an uncomfortable possibility. What if this crime didn't start as a kidnapping at all? He pointed to the blood found at Nancy's front door, suggested that whatever happened, things went wrong very quickly, and the ransom notes may have been crafted after the fact to disguise a home invasion that turned violent. The abrupt end of communications after 2 deadlines passed could support that theory. But authorities continue to operate under the assumption that Nancy is alive. Sheriff Nano said in a March 2nd interview that his team believes she is still out there. He said investigators are definitely closer to answers than they were a month ago. The science is closing in, and investigative genetic genealogy has never failed to identify a suspect when a usable DNA profile exists. It took 4 months to catch the Golden State Killer after the DNA was uploaded. It took weeks in the Kohberger case once genealogists received the sample. The timeline depends on the quality of the profile and the depth of available genealogy data. A former FBI Special Agent Robin Dreek has said it's possible that authorities already have the perpetrator's name buried somewhere within the thousands of leads and tips they've received. Sometimes in investigations this large, the answer is hiding in data that's already been collected. It just needs to be connected to the right profile. That's exactly what genetic genealogy does. It connects an anonymous DNA sample to a name, a family, and ultimately a face. 5 weeks have passed since Nancy Guthrie was taken from her bed. No arrests have been made, no suspect has been publicly named. But the DNA is in the labs. The genealogists are building their family trees. And the clock is ticking, not for the investigation, but for the person who left their genetic signature at a crime scene and believed they got away with it. If this case follows the pattern of the Golden State Killer, of Kohberger, of the Gilgo Beach murders, the answer is already written in the science. It's just waiting to be read. This case shows how DNA technology has revolutionized criminal investigations, how doorbell cameras create digital evidence that can't be destroyed, and how one mistake can unravel an entire crime. If you want coverage of major breaks as they happen in cases that capture national attention, subscribe to True Crime Antenna for updates when new information emerges. Let me know in the comments what you think happened to Nancy Guthrie. The person who took Nancy Guthrie made several critical mistakes. They left DNA at the scene. They left gloves 2 miles away. They appeared on camera trying to disable a doorbell. They positioned a holster wrong. They wore a ring under their gloves. Each mistake is a breadcrumb. Each error is evidence. And genetic genealogy has a 100% success rate when clean DNA profiles exist. Or Joseph DeAngelo thought he'd gotten away with murder for 40 years. Until a distant cousin's DNA on Ancestry.com led investigators straight to his door. Brian Koberger thought turning off his phone created an alibi, until digital forensics showed the gap itself was evidence. The Golden State Killer, the Idaho murders, the Gilgo Beach case, all solved the same way: DNA, family trees, patient detective work. The technology doesn't lie. The science doesn't fail. And genealogists don't stop until they have a name. Somewhere right now, forensic scientists are isolating that 10% DNA profile from the mixture found at Nancy's home, uploading it to databases, waiting for matches. Somewhere, a genealogist is building a family tree from a distant relative who took an ancestry test years ago and has no idea their DNA just connected to a kidnapping case. Somewhere, investigators are cross-referencing that family tree with geography, with age ranges, then with the physical description from the doorbell footage. And somewhere, the person who took Nancy Guthrie is watching the news, reading updates, wondering if the investigators are getting close. They are. The DNA is already in the system. The genealogy work has already begun. The family tree is already being built. And when genetic genealogy solves this case, when the FBI announces an arrest, when they reveal how a distant cousin's DNA led them to the suspect's front door, and it won't be surprising. It will be expected. Because this is what the science does. This is how modern investigations work. This is justice in the 21st century. Nancy Guthrie went to dinner with her daughter on January 31st, 2026. She played games. She laughed. She said goodnight. Her son-in-law drove her home at 9:48 p.m. Her garage door closed at 9:50 p.m. At 1:47 a.m., someone disconnected her doorbell camera. At 2:28 a.m., her pacemaker stopped transmitting to her phone. 41 minutes. And that's all it took. But in those 41 minutes, the person who took her left DNA behind, left gloves on the side of a road, got captured on camera, and now, 5 weeks later, that evidence is closing in on them. The cameras that were supposed to be disabled? The data was already uploaded to Google's servers. The gloves that were thrown away, they contained a full male DNA profile. The mixture DNA from inside the house? Forensic scientists are isolating the contributor profile right now. Every piece of evidence is a nail. Every mistake is a witness. Every error is testimony. And genetic genealogy is the jury that never fails to deliver a verdict. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She has a pacemaker. She needs daily medication. She has a family that loves her and is fighting for her every single day. And somewhere, the person who took her is running out of time. Not because the investigation is rushing, but because the science is patient, methodical, and unstoppable. The Golden State Killer learned that lesson. Brian Koberger learned that lesson. Every criminal who thought they could outsmart DNA learned that lesson. You can wear gloves, you can wear masks, you can disconnect cameras, you can turn off phones, but you cannot erase your genetic code. You cannot delete your family tree. You cannot hide from science. The DNA doesn't care if you're careful. It doesn't care if you planned for months. It doesn't care if you think you were smart. So it's already there, in the database, waiting to be matched. And when it connects to a name, when genealogists build that family tree, when investigators show up with a warrant, the person who took Nancy Guthrie will learn what every other criminal has learned. You can run from police, you can hide from witnesses, you can avoid cameras, but you cannot run from your own DNA. The science is closing in, the family tree is being built, and justice is coming. It's not a question of if. It's a question of when. And for Nancy Guthrie's family, when that day comes, when investigators announce an arrest, when the person who took their mother is finally identified, it won't bring Nancy back. But it will prove that even in the darkest crimes, even when someone disappears in 41 minutes in the middle of the night, the evidence remains. The doorbell camera captured the footage. The gloves held the DNA. The science preserved the truth. And somewhere in a forensic lab right now, The genetic genealogists are one match away from giving the Guthrie family the answer they've been waiting for. One match away from exposing whoever thought they could take an 84-year-old woman from her home and get away with it. The investigation continues. The family waits, and the DNA is already telling its story. It's just waiting for someone to read it.